Hello, everyone. We're back with the final episode of the Windsor Wednesday Show. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today and for being part of the hashtag #YouandProud community. We have three incredibly special guests on today's show. But before we get started, I just want to let anybody who's watching in the audience today, if you have any questions or comments you want our guests to see, you can leave them in the comment section. So our first guest is Tim Brunet. Tim is the coordinator of Outstanding Scholars and Student Leadership at Windsor. He is also a sessional instructor in the FAST and economics departments, teaching classes like speech communication to inform, business communication, media technology and the environment, and working in digital communities. Tim has previously worked as a university social media coordinator and is a proud Windsor alumni, graduating with a combined honors French and music degree in 1994. Tim has extensively researched the governance of Anglophone higher education systems and has a recent publication titled The Capability Approach, a proposed framework for experiential learning in the Faculty of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Our second guest is Irene Moore-Davis. Irene is a Windsor, Ontario-based educator, writer, historian, activist, and podcaster. She speaks frequently about diversity, inclusion, equity, and African Canadian history. She fulfills a variety of community roles, including president of the Essex County Black Historical Research Society, co-founder of Black Women Forward Action, co-host of the All Right in Sin City podcast, and program chair at BookFest Windsor. And of course, along with Heidi Allen Jacobs, Irene was co-executive producer of the award-winning short documentary The North Was Our Canon, directed by Anusha Singh, and she is the co-executive producer of the new documentary project titled Across the River to Freedom, to be released in 2022, which we will talk about a bit today. Hello, Irene.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hello, and our third and final guest is Jakob Skrzypa. Jakob is an award-winning screenwriter who has written and directed over 30 shorts as part of the comedy duo Fun Uncle. These films have earned him various festival awards, and most recently, he's worked as a segment producer on MTV's The Challenge, All Stars. Additionally, he's worked on other major television productions, including Survivor, Decker, Big Brother Canada, and an editor for the NYC-based Trona Entertainment, and the critically acclaimed Comedy Central series, Nathan For You. His first feature screenplay, Vampire Zombies from Space, is set to be directed by Windsor professor Mike Stasko in summer 2022. And of course, Jakob has a double major in communications, media, and film, and history, as well as a minor in German language. Welcome, Jakob, and welcome to all of our guests. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to begin our Q&A session with Tim. Tim, can you tell us what the Outstanding Scholars Program is and what opportunities are there for research and leadership development?
Great. Thanks, Susie, for having me on the show today. The Outstanding Scholars Program is an elite undergraduate research network opportunity for high-achieving students at the University of Windsor. So we have 100 students enter the program as candidates in year one, and we currently have around 250 OS students spread out across years 2, 3, and 4 who are conducting research with a professor here at Windsor. In terms of leadership development, OS students have an 8-week peer mentoring program for incoming first-year students, so you can either be the mentee or the mentor. And the program is organized, the mentor program is organized by OS students and is designed to assist with the transition to university. The great thing is that the OS program is laden with talent and students full of initiative, and is also led by the Outstanding Scholars Student Council, and they organize activities for students throughout the year. So they get not only to learn about research, but they get mentorship opportunities with faculty, and then they themselves turn around and become mentors to the new incoming students.
That's incredible. And what are the requisites for becoming a outstanding scholar?
Well, it depends. If you're coming in from high school, it's usually grade-based, and there's also an application form. You can also apply in when you're in year one for year two opportunities.
Okay,
yeah. And so I can put the full details, of course, in the chat at the end of the show for those people who are interested. And the funny thing is, most students in high school don't think that they would be interested in research, or that maybe they would be eligible for the program. So there are lots of opportunities to do undergraduate research. This isn't the only one at the university. Some students become research assistants, some get into the Ignite program as well. And some students really flourish when they get into year one. So what happened in high school looks a lot different once they get to study something they love and feel passionate about when they get here.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Just from personally speaking, my work ethic compared to how I was in high school and first year has completely changed to who I am now as a senior fourth year student. And Tim, reading a little bit more about you, you have years and years in academia. How has that helped you with your current duties and responsibilities as coordinator of outstanding scholars?
So yeah, you kind of threw my age under the bus there when you said my year that I graduated in 1994, last century, in fact. So I've been at the university for 20 years, and I've worked in places like the student recruitment office, where I was able to lead a student ambassador program who gave tours to high school students. I met students from all across Ontario, guidance counselors, teachers. We ran recruitment events, and this really framed for me a really multi-dimensional vision for what university looked like for people across the province. And Windsor is unique in a lot of ways. First, we're a smaller university at the end of this tiny little peninsula, which opens up to this massive border and busy border. And we also have an incredible diversity and a fascinating history. And so, having the opportunity to work with students throughout my career has been really what has shaped me. I've worked in other areas like transition from college to university. So you get to meet students who went the college route and then wanted to transfer to university. I met executives from all across Canada, and that kind of catapulted me into doing my PhD at University of Toronto, which is nearly done, thankfully, and so a few more months. And what's fascinating about all this is I've learned to see university and what it can do for people from the framework of leadership that's currently in those positions, but also from families and students. And I really value my time with families and students, from the ones who are so scared to come on campus, and where I would look at them and I'd say, "You look really anxious. What are you nervous about?" And they would just say, "Well, it's a university." And I said, "Well, that's okay. So let's look at what we can do for you today." And that opportunity has shaped me more than anything, to have those quality conversations with students about what they see university could do for them.
Yeah, and that's incredibly powerful. And students, come from all across the country and all across the world to U Windsor. So having staff and faculty that make them feel comfortable is really important. And Tim, are you working remotely, or are you working at the university right now?
I'm doing both.
All
So
right.
I'm partially at home. I'm trying to get things rolling at the university as much as possible, while following all the safety standards that the university has worked so diligently to put together.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to getting back on campus and hopefully seeing you there, Tim. So, all right.
Great.
We'll move on to Irene now. And Irene, there are so many deep ties to the Underground Railroad and Black Canadian settlements. What have been some of your findings in your publication, specifically in your chapter on the Black Canadian settlements in a Balloon Frontier, Slavery Resistance, and the Underground Railroad in the Detroit River borderland, which I read in your bio and it was really interesting. So I just want to know your perspective.
Yeah, well, let me begin by saying that I want to throw myself under the bus and say that I graduated from my undergrad at Windsor in 1993. And it's been a very interesting journey since then. I graduated in English and history, and both of those things are about storytelling, right? So I'm really excited anytime I get to tell the stories of the ancestors in this region. Such fascinating history we have here. In A Fluid Frontier, we were a group of US and Canadian historians, both academic and community historians, who were trying to really explore the history of the Detroit River region and how important it was in the era of slavery and the Underground Railroad, and all of those acts of resistance, individual and collaborative, that resulted in freedom coming to everyone. So in my chapter, I was really focused on Windsor and Essex County. And we had an opportunity through that publication to just tell these amazing stories, individual stories of freedom seekers who made their way here, like Thornton and Lucy Blackburn and Caroline Quarles and Alan Watkins, and all of these incredible people who had just these incredible, courageous journeys and showed so much resilience and determination. But also, we were able to focus on these interconnected networks of freedom seekers and anti-slavery activists on both sides of the border who really worked together to make this a safe haven. It wasn't heaven, but it was a safe haven. And the ways in which those networks worked together to help people move across the Detroit River, the fluid frontier, and find safety here. And, you know, one of the other things that I was able to really explore in my chapter was just how to, you know, get rid of or dispel some of those mythologies that we often have about the freedom seekers, especially. We have a tendency to view them as just sort of inanimate objects who were passed from south to north by kindly abolitionists. But I really wanted to get into the project of showing how they themselves were instrumental in their transformation into people living in freedom, and to show how they showed agency and how important their own decision making was in those daily and minute by minute decisions that got them here to safety. But the other thing I would share is just that people don't have a sense of how important this region was for the abolitionist community. So when we look at the history of Windsor and Sandwich and Amherstburg and places like that, we're also looking at the history of these African Americans who were involved in the anti-slavery movement, who decided to move here and make this their base of operations, because it was a place where they could assist refugees from slavery, and it was also a place where they could do their best work out of danger and really writing and speaking and lobbying for American slavery to end. And those are some of the really thrilling stories that we have here in this region.
And you mentioned, you know, the rich cultural and historical ties, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on today with a couple of more questions to you. But if anyone's interested in reading your publication, how can they find that?
You know, A Fluid Frontier is available. It's from Wayne State University Press. It came out in 2016, and it's certainly been widely used, so it can be accessed. There are a lot of great publications, though. I would encourage you just to look into the wealth of information that's been published in recent years, especially around the Underground Railroad, around slavery in North America, including Canada. And, you know, make sure that you're using up-to-date sources. A lot of the early work that we saw about these topics were written kind of in a self-congratulatory manner by people with white savior tendencies, who were the individuals who had access to the press in the late 19th century and so on, and who would talk about their own exploits, having assisted freedom seekers or having helped to end the institution of slavery. But so much of the work that is done now centers people of African descent more appropriately and focuses on the agency, the control, the impact that they had on changing their own lives and the lives of their communities. So I would encourage you to look up really almost anything that's been written in the last 20 years and consider that really the best source of information.
Okay, well, that's really incredible information, and we'll hopefully be able to connect some Windsor students with some publications, so we can all learn more about the rich history our area has. And Irene, you serve a variety of community roles within Windsor-Essex. What opportunities do organizations like the Black Historical Research Society, BookFest, and the Black Women Aboard Action bring to the community? And are there any opportunities for Windsor students to get involved?
Yeah, for sure there are. I mean, I would say that the Essex County Black Historical Research Society does a lot of work, including the documentaries on which we're now working, but also just getting into the schools, helping teachers with curriculum resources and appropriately researched, appropriately written information that they can share with students. We're involved with the University of Windsor right now on a very special project that is called We Were Here, Stories of the McDougall Street Corridor, and we're uncovering the history of the Black businesses and gathering spaces and organizations and residences that were part of a very vibrant community here in Windsor known as the McDougall Street Corridor, which was unfortunately dismantled in the era of urban renewal in the mid-20th century. So that's being undertaken right now as a partnership with the university. The documentaries are another partnership, and I'll speak about that later. But we do a lot of work just sharing the good news and the messages that people need to hear, working on historic plaques and designations, things of that nature, and certainly running a lot of events and activities. So there are always ways for students to get involved in that kind of work if they're interested. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. And I would say BookFest Windsor, that's the other side of my favorite thing, which is literature. We have a wonderful literary festival. It's been regarded as one of the best literary festivals in Canada for quite a while now. And we're always looking for assistance to help run that festival. It's been virtual the last couple of years. We're hoping very much to get back to a face-to-face or at least hybrid model for 2022. We usually start planning for that in January for the October festival. So we'll definitely be looking for help with that.
Okay, well, we'll hopefully be able to also, speaking about before the publications, connect some students with some links to get involved with those great initiatives in our community. And we'll move on to Jakob now. We already spoke to Tim and Irene about being alumni, and you yourself are a Windsor alumni as well, graduating with a communications and film history degree. And I just want to know, you have now a career in the filmmaking industry. How did that degree help build the skills you needed to succeed?
Yeah, well, I think one of the best things that I got out of my experience at Windsor, in the film program specifically, was the fact that I was able to rent equipment on the weekends and just go out and make stuff with my friends, because a lot of what I made is kind of stuff I would use to then show to, various shows or producers or different people and say, like, this is something I just made on the weekend with my friends, and that opened a lot of doors, actually. So I know a lot of other schools, it's kind of hard sometimes to get equipment. It's not always easy. So that was something that I felt really, really benefited me, was just the easy access to the equipment. And also just working with different types of people, because the thing in the film industry, and I mean, most jobs, is you inevitably meet a variety of people with different personalities. And a huge part of like producing and working on productions is managing different personalities and just getting along with everybody. Like most film jobs are, anywhere from 16 to 22-hour days with the same people. So you want to work with people you like, you want to work with people who are going to get along. And, so I think in that way, like, the program makes you work with different groups of people for different projects, and you're always in different roles. So that was another thing, is learning to wear every hat. It wasn't just writing, it wasn't just directing. It was, okay, I'm going to get crafty and snacks for everyone today. Okay, I'm doing the sound today. I'm doing just kind of being a master of every area, I guess. So I think that really helped too.
And obviously in screenwriting, you have to edit, write, and direct. Which of those do you enjoy doing the most?
Personally, I think writing is recently become kind of my main focus. It's just having the freedom to kind of tell whatever story you want to tell, and no limits, and really reworking the story and making it as strong as it can possibly be is something I really enjoy. There's a script we're currently working on. We're at like draft 18. So we've done like 18 revisions of this, 90-page script over and over and over. And each time, although it seems tedious, the story gets better, it gets tighter, the character arcs are better. It's really a rewarding process.
And is that typical that you have to revise it so many times, or are you just being a perfectionist?
No, I think it is kind of typical, maybe not 18 drafts, but like,
Wow.
I think you do want to revise and look at it with fresh eyes. And like,
Yeah.
like for me, the thing is, I want it to be the best it can be, especially in instances where I might not be directing or I might not be producing. If I'm just handing off the script to someone, I want to make sure it's as close to what I see in my head, so that when they get that, they can then take that and replicate it as I see it, I guess. So, and it's just fun. Like when you create characters, and especially I do comedy is my area of focus with scripts. It's fun. Like it's a weird thing where like, even though it's all you get in the heads of these characters and you think how they think and you speak how they speak. And so when you stage these conversations, I don't know, it's really fun, and it's hard to leave after you finish. So you kind of want to keep going back to it.
And Jakob, my last question for you, when you're thinking of a character, what goes behind it? Are you always thinking of the entirety of the story, or do you kind of pick and choose when you're thinking of character development and things like that?
Well, you always want to have an interesting protagonist. Like you want a character that the audience is going to be able to relate to, and you want someone interesting. It's got to be someone you're going to want to follow for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. But the other thing, like the characters I like to write are not usually the main characters. It's all the side characters. Especially in comedy, they're usually the more wacky characters. So I think what I look for is just characters that make me laugh and that are fun to write and that are going to really challenge the protagonist, because every story ever is, a person goes up a tree, they get stuck in the tree, and then someone throws rocks at them while they're in the tree, and then they get down the tree. So you need conflict. You need a protagonist who's going to butt heads with all the people around them, and those people are the people I enjoy writing. I like writing kind of like jerks, like the Seinfeld, It's Always Sunny, like, not great people usually, but those are the ones that make the main character evolve and change and become a better person in the end, usually.
All right, and that's incredible, and that's something I never knew, and I was actually thinking about asking you. So that's great, Jakob. And you've graduated. You've had some experience in taking communications courses, and Tim, moving back to you, you've helped teach as a sessional instructor in both the FAST and economics departments. So what are some of the benefits in taking a communications course, especially at Windsor? Tim, I think you might be muted.
There we go. So the short answer is that if you can't communicate and network your ideas, they aren't going to develop in meaningful ways or go very far. So the best communication scholars and instructors have the capacity to bridge disciplines and peer into an entire system of knowledge through information sharing and collaborating with other researchers and practitioners. Understanding communication at the level of organization, so typically something you might study in a business class, organizational communication, can help make organizations thrive, because you're bringing everybody's ideas into the fore and collaborating and making them roll out in meaningful ways. And if you're a good communicator, you get to be part of that opportunity. More importantly, at the interpersonal level, interpersonal communication can help you lead a flourishing life, and build the kinds of affiliations that help you love what you do and who you are. So I think of Jakob talking about being on a set with somebody for 6. I sure hope you know how to communicate, because that's going to fall to pieces in just a few minutes or at a point of tension. So my recommendation is, take some communication courses here at the University of Windsor. Find something that is interesting to you, but you really need to learn to communicate in context and learn from your experiences. So, add to your courses by joining a club, being part of a team, getting on a film set like Jakob did. And I just listened to the rich, thick description from Irene and all of the experiences she's had and networking and pulling people in there. So you really need to learn the context you're in. The theories will only get you part of the way, but practicing that within a network and learning to share that information really helps you to thrive in everyday life.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that advice. And Tim, you have a recent publication which deals with the concept of the capabilities approach and how it fits with the framework of experiential learning. Can you share some of your findings with us?
Yeah, so as a teacher scholar, I approach my teaching in a reflective and scholarly way. A key ingredient for my teaching is to check in with students by conducting, in-class discussions, workshops, and providing structured and unstructured opportunities for reflection. But I also want the students to engage in networking with their peers, academics, and practitioners in the community. That publication wouldn't have been possible without a really strong network from the capabilities approach, where I did a PhD summer school, but also the networks that I've had the opportunity to be a part of here at the University of Windsor. And doing that kind of research really requires you to be very reflective about how you set it up. So I always like to thank Dr. Suzanne McMurphy from the Research Ethics Board, who really helped me to envision that. So the paper you've referenced is an example of a research opportunity in my teaching, and the capability approach in the paper allows me to understand the student experience on the terms of human development rather than, what gets measured so much these days are employment outcomes, which is an important part of the consideration. Most of us need to work to live and thrive, and so I don't discount that in any way, shape, or form. But the capabilities approach asks the question, what are people able to do and to be? So I ask that question in relation to the curriculum and the pedagogies I use. So when I give students an assignment, a workshop, or we develop an experiential learning opportunity, I ask, what are they able to do with that experience, and how will it impact their opportunity to be who they are and aspire to be? So I explore whether that activity provides students an opportunity to become a known character. We'll say that fits in with the panel today. We're talking, there's a lot of references about character development, but to become a character in a network, to access resources that will help them grow as a person, as a colleague, a family member, a citizen, a student, or a friend. So I also look to see if they're getting an opportunity to make a valued contribution. I can't hit all of those in every class or cohort, but I can step back and think more actively about the overall impact in my class and what my teaching has on students. So you can imagine this is very heavy lifting on practical terms. So I put it into a paper and presented at a conference alongside two student co-authors, Hassan Shaban and Stephanie Gonsalves. I proposed that this activity is particularly critical when working with broad populations where some students are caring for their parents and others have, and they're working alongside others, to use an expression, who are experiencing life as a boulevard of green lights. So you put them into a group. And so in the paper, it allowed students to have a voice about what it was like to do group work on campus, what it was like to carry the load of the things that students are challenged with at the University of Windsor, or to have that load to bear while you're trying to be a university student. So we found ways to look at the student experience and evaluate it in a multidimensional way. We typically take a student in the class and we say, here's your assignment, and we give it to them and we give them a grade and then we move on. But we don't oftentimes look at how that assignment impacted their daily lives. We don't look at how that assignment allowed them to flourish or didn't allow them to flourish. So what I found were new ways to explore that evaluation, it was a new way to give students an opportunity to voice what they were thinking.
All right, that's incredible, Tim. And I will leave the link if people are interested in learning more. We have Phoebe Lamb in the comments. Hi, Dr. Phoebe Lamb. And she completely agrees with the context of communicating and getting getting engaged as well. So thank you, Tim. We're going to move on to Irene. Irene, I have a couple of questions for you regarding the film. You have a couple of films coming up. You recently had a film come out in 2020, The North Was Our Cannon, and have an upcoming documentary titled Across the River to Freedom to be released in 2022. What inspired you to create these documentaries?
Well, I mean, there are those two projects, and then there are a couple of others too. I've been recently involved in one called Journey Back to Jackson Park, which focuses on the story of the great emancipation celebrations here in Windsor over the decades. And I've been involved with Black Women Forward Action. We're creating a documentary called Our Truth, Our Stories, which is about contemporary narratives of racism as it's been experienced by people of African descent in Windsor and Essex County, but also their stories of overcoming and resisting and community collaborations to address those issues. But specific to Underground Railroad era history, yeah, I'm so excited about The North Was Our Canaan. It was brought out in 2020. It was also the result of a collaboration with the University of Windsor and the Essex County Black Historical Research Society. And it really began to touch the surface in terms of the rich history of the Black community in Sandwich or West Windsor, and how long-standing that community is, how deep those roots are, and what some of the most important aspects of that history were, because it's not just local history, it's national history and international history in terms of having this really major impact on the slavery traditions and laws and those realities, and finding ways for people to live new lives in freedom. Across the River to Freedom takes a look at some specific individual stories, 3 couples who were part of Sandwich Black history. So we're looking at Caroline Quarles and Ellen Watkins, we're looking at Thornton and Lucy Blackburn, and we're looking at Henry and Mary Bibb. And one of the things that I really hope to achieve with these 3 short films is just to give people a sense of the story not ending when people crossed the border and arrived in Canaan or the Promised Land. It's just the beginning of the story, and the ways in which they used their new position, their new location, to create entirely new lives, to better themselves and their communities, to actually alter the trajectory of history. Without going into too much detail, if we look at Mary and Henry Bibb, they come here as anti-slavery activists, him a formerly enslaved person himself. They establish Canada's first Black newspaper. They establish a school. They set up the Refugee Home Society, which helps formerly enslaved people to own their own lands and farms for the first time. They radically alter many other people's lives through their brief activities here in Sandwich. Thornton and Lucy Blackburn come here as enslaved people, formerly enslaved people who have self-emancipated. There's a whole huge story about how they got here. But when the Americans tried to extradite them, to bring them back into slavery, the decision that was made based on their own self-advocacy largely altered the way that Canada dealt with those questions forever thereafter. And then we look at Caroline Quarles and Ellen Watkins, 2 extraordinary freedom seekers with harrowing journeys, just the way that they came together through their newfound freedom and forged an entirely new clan, the Watkins family, that remains so much a part of Windsor history and Canadian history. That's certainly a story worth telling. So, we go to these methods of storytelling because it's not going to be everybody's choice to look these things up in a scholarly journal or an academic book or a publication. We want to reach as many people as possible and really embed these stories in people's heads and hearts and help them to relate to these characters who are real people. And I think documentaries are a great way to do that.
Well, we're all really looking forward to the release in 2022. And speaking of Windsor-Essex Black history, what opportunities are there for people in the city to learn more about Windsor-Essex Black history?
I have to say there are a great many really excellent web resources that are better vetted than they used to be that I think you'll find very instructive. There's some great work that I've been involved in and the History Society has been involved in with the Greater Essex County District School Board called African Canadian Roads to Freedom. So if you look up those resources, they have quite a bit of information about local history. There are some great places to visit. Our Tower of Freedom Monument downtown has some wonderful information attached to it, including Canada's federal historic plaque about the Underground Railroad. There's a lot you can learn by visiting that monument, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. There's the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. There's certainly the John and Jane Freeman Walls Historic Site. There's Sandwich First Baptist Church, where you can take a great tour by appointment. And even at Museum Windsor, there are some wonderful resources. But I would just encourage people to learn all that they can, just focus on some stories, get to know these people, get to understand that the Underground Railroad story didn't end with people just crossing the river. It continues through the lives of the people who arrived here and the generations that followed them. And there's just so much more for all of us to learn.
That's great that there's not just articles or things like that to do, but you can also get out in the community and either go to a memorial or visit a museum. So lots of great opportunities. And we're going to finish off our Q&A. Thank you, Irene. And we'll follow up now with Jakob. You've been involved with many exciting projects, and your first feature screenplay, Vampire Zombies from Space, ! Is set to be directed by Windsor professor Mike Statsko in December 2022. Can you tell us a little bit more about this project, and what is it like having a faculty member of your alma mater working on your project?
Yeah, well, it certainly feels funny talking about my space school movie after hearing about, important Black history documentaries, but it is exactly as it sounds. It's a goofy comedy. It satirizes the old kind of 1950s creature feature drive-in movies. I very much grew up with Mel Brooks movies and parody and satire. So it's a comedy about a group of unlikely heroes who have to come together and save the world from vampire zombies from space. This was actually a script that I began writing in high school. In like 2010, I tried to film it with a group of friends, and it was obviously it's still immature, but it was a lot more immature in high school. And me and my frequent collaborator, Alex Foreman, another UWindsor graduate, we retooled the script, repurposed it, and then we brought it to Mike Statsko. Who actually I was never taught by Mike Statsko. He wasn't there when I was in school, but he does so much for Windsor film in general. And I brought it to him. Actually, I brought a different project to him originally, and I sat down with him, and we kind of talked it out. And this was my first time meeting him, and he was like, "Yeah, like that. It's a good idea, but it's maybe not right for me. What else do you have?" And I was like, "Well, I have this really dumb space vampire thing. But you're not going to be interested in that." And so he's like, "Yeah, send me the script." And yeah, it kind of went from there. He was interested. And then for the longest time, he was saying, like, unless there's some kind of world disaster, summer 2020, we're filming. And then, of course, COVID hit. So this project has really been, like, since 2010. It's been something that we've been trying to get made, and it's exciting to hopefully summer 2022. We will be filming it, but it's very cool to have Mike involved. He's made a lot of films locally, and he's really been a great mentor to Alex and me, just in the more, I guess, business side of things, and honestly, the making the story stronger as well. Like he's kind of said from day one, like he trusts us with comedy. He's not going to touch any of our jokes, but the story can be tighter, and here's some ideas to consider and whatever. So. It's really been a great learning experience, and I think UWindsor is very lucky to have Mike as a faculty member. He does a lot for students, and I'm really hoping we can film. And VampireZombiesMovie.com is where you can find out more. And yeah.
That's awesome, Jakob. And you just spoke about having worked on this since 2010. What advice would you give to an aspiring screenwriter? Are there any other opportunities on the Windsor campus for students to get started in the profession?
Okay, let me handle that in two ways. So first for screenwriting advice, it's kind of old hat, but like writing is rewriting. You got to love your story, because you're going to write it potentially 18, 20 times, and then you're going to have to film it and then sit through the edits and then sit through screenings. So you really got to love your idea. Not every idea, sometimes I'll sit down, or Alex and I will sit down and we'll write an idea and it's great. And then the next day we're like, I don't know, it's not really, so you have ideas, and it's okay to have bad ideas, but if you want to write and that's what you want to do, you have to write. Like, you got to make yourself do it. I try and commit to like half an hour every day, no matter what, even if I'm just writing something that I feel is terrible, just get the words out. The other big thing when writing is don't go back and revise what you've already written. Like, let's say you get 10 pages done. continue, get 20 pages done, then 30, all the way up to whatever your goal is, then go back and revise the whole thing, because you're going to keep perfecting those first 10 pages and you'll never get a script done. So we call it a vomit draft. We get just all the words vomited out on paper. Good, we have our story A to B. Now let's poke holes in it and revise and rewrite. So that's that. And for your other question was, are there opportunities for you Windsor students? Yes, I think Windsor is a really good place to get started in film, because most other cities I've lived and worked in, you wouldn't be able to film anywhere without a permit. Windsor is very good we have a lot of different locations that you can just go to. There are a lot of local businesses that I've filmed in that will just open their doors and let you come in. Maybe less so with COVID right now, but just go out and do it. Like if this is what you want to do, you got to really want to do it, because it's a very hard industry. For every job I have gotten, there's 200 emails I sent that I never heard anything from. So if you want it, just go do it. That's the best, like anything with film, the best experience is just going out and doing it. You'll learn so much more just by doing it yourself and getting your feet wet. Like So, and there's a lot of local people who are doing it. Like I'm always welcoming new people on set. Like, hit me up. I'll get you, out there, and if I can, I will. So.
All right. Well, that's awesome, Jakob. And that's great that there are so many opportunities for people to get involved, not just in maybe the writing aspect, but maybe in the screenwriting, acting, things of that sort. So we have 3 incredible communicators on today's show. This is our last Windsor Wednesday of the year. I want to thank all of our guests for coming on today. We also had a couple of people involved in our chats. Thank you to Dr. Phoebe Lamb for always letting us know how we're doing and for commenting on our section as well. So thank you. Everyone will be back with the Windsor Wednesday Show back on January the 12th at noon. As always, if you enjoyed today's show and are interested in being a guest, you can contact myself or the Office of Student Experience. And we'll see you all right here in the new year on the Windsor Wednesday Show. Bye, everyone.